You're listening to Storage Nerds Podcast, where we unravel the best-kept secret of the real estate investing world, the storage industry. Join the grassroots guru in self-storage, Stacy Rossetti, in insightful discussions about finding, funding, and running these spaces, allowing you to yield the highest returns possible. Get your foot in the door on self-storage and discover how to properly purchase facilities, negotiate with sellers, and close the deal without worries. Start unpacking that investment wisdom with Stacy right now.
But today I'm going to just do just getting started, because a lot of people, message me and they just say okay, what do I need to do in order to get started? And so we have 16 facilities that we own ourselves, me and my husband. And then I'm partnering in about maybe 15 to 20 different deals right now with my students. And we've closed, in the last 5 years, I've closed 50 deals, at least 50 deals with students through the Storage Nerds coaching program. So I think I have a lot of experience in any type of deal that comes across my plate or my students' plate. And the way that they fund these deals is totally random. How we find them is totally random. How we fund them, all right? And everybody always kind of manages them a little bit different as well too. So that's kind of what I'm going to talk about today. Just give you guys a brief overview of my teaching style, how I go through everything. And I'm going to take you just start to finish. So you guys, I can see some of you are introducing yourself in the chat. So I really appreciate it. So I see Laura's here. She's in Oregon and she's going to buy her first facility. And then I see, is it Eli? And Eli's in San Antonio. I'm originally from Austin, just so you know. We're up in Austin. And we now live in Florida, in Tallahassee is where we're at. And then Pierce is in Oregon as well. So you got two Oregon. Introduce yourself as you come in. Introduce yourself. Let me know where you're at. I can also kind of tell you what your industry is going to look like, and because we've got students that have bought all across the country. In fact, I have 8 virtual assistants that work for me, and they do nothing but just call owners. And that's the way that I teach. I teach you need to call the owner, talk to the owner, and build a relationship with the owner directly. So I don't teach going and looking on Pepsi or Vietnam or, talking to brokers and stuff. I just say just cut out all the middle people, just go directly. And so, we have a couple of people that actually, we have one person that just moved to Portland. She lived in, one of my students lived in Vegas and started looking for storage facilities. And she ended up buying one right on the border of Oregon and Washington, on the water. And then she moved to Portland. And so now she's living in Portland. She's in a facility. And I can't remember what the name of the town is. That's kind of, so lots of really good opportunities out there for sure on the west side of the country. Actually, there's really a lot of opportunities anywhere. Now, the good thing is that, they were kind of getting to the point where, people are relaxing a little bit more. Obviously, there's an election coming up, and we don't know really what's going to happen with that. But I feel like the Fed is really kind of okay, maybe things are starting to change a little bit. So my prediction is by the end of this year, things are going to start loosening up a little bit. We won't be so stressed out about interest rates and stuff like that. And by next year, you're going to have a lot of opportunity to get back into this industry. So, and then also another thing was really cool. I saw a graph that one of my students posted out, which was on average, the interest rates over the last 30 years come out to 7.75%, which I think is honestly pretty good. My personal opinion is an interest rate between the average of 5 to 7 on all the commercial property is really kind of where you're going to be. So if you're holding out and you're waiting for interest rates to drop, and you're I'm not going to buy any property until the interest rates drop, really the truth is you're just shooting yourself in the foot, because a lot of other people are going to come by and snatch those facilities up, and you're going to miss out. And the truth is there's only so much storage facility. There's only so much storage that you can have in this country, right? You can't it's not like multifamily, just build and there's always a need for housing and stuff, right? We will cap out on how much storage that is needed in each area. Okay. So in each market. And so, and we're already kind of capped out on a lot of like the primary market. Because, when you're getting the primary markets, right? So I call this primary market. I'll kind of turn it, I'll tell you. But because like I know my volume is not good right now. I get it, but I'm gonna have my video guy come over and kind of set this up. I'm in a new office. And so like there's a little bit of an echo. We're trying to figure all that out. So just bear with me while we figure it out. Hopefully by next Wednesday I'll have it all set up. But so there's 3 markets in this industry. There's the primary market, the secondary market, and the tertiary market. It's kind of when you hear like, I don't know, actually to hear about it. I have no idea. I never listened to anybody. But like, so this is what I say: primary, secondary, and tertiary market. So the primary market obviously is going to be like your big cities and your metro area. So when you think of a primary market, you're thinking of Orlando, Nashville, Atlanta, these kinds of things. Okay. And then what I do is I separate out each of these markets into sub-markets. And and it kind of like breaks it up, because the truth is that like storage is really based off of population. And then like it's population divided by square footage. All right. Let's think about that in that term. Population divided by square feet. Okay? Which we call net count. So inside an area, a radius, there is only like so much population that you could have, right? And there's so much building that you could have. There's so much commercial property or housing, whatever that you do. You think in terms of that way. And they really do have to think about that in terms of storage. Okay. And so like what happens is that there's a lot of people that, there's a lot of storage. It gets saturated. And then if there's too much storage and like you can't really add more people, then you have too much storage and you're going to be the one that kind of loses out, because there's just only enough. You only have enough storage per people. It's not like people are going to just keep wanting to just put all their stuff into storage forever, never, never. It's going to cap out. It's basically what it is. Okay. And so, and each of these markets that I'm talking about have like certain numbers and certain requirements and stuff. So there's no like one way. So people are like, oh, how do you calculate like, your net capita per square foot? And it's like, it really kind of just depends on the market and how things are moving and shifting and stuff. So, and really what you could do is you follow like moving companies. And moving companies really have a lot of data, like really big moving companies will give out data. And all the big companies like Publix, not Publix, that's a grocery store. Like what are they called? Cube Smart and Extra Space Storage and stuff. They're really compiling the data from all these like moving companies. And what they're doing is they're following like trends on where people are moving, relocating, and how like markets are shifting and stuff. So Cube Smart just doesn't go and like just build a facility wherever. And they're like, oh, that place is growing. Let me go and either acquire something there or build something. And that's how it is, right? So anyway, so market, like watching the markets and understanding these markets, like super important in the storage. And so primary market is like going to be your metro areas. Primary market is going to be your Orlandos and your Nashville's and Atlanta's, or I don't know, I live in Florida, so those are like all the cities but a primary market really encompasses, the sub markets, which are called like, what are the cities called that are like surrounding, let's say Atlanta, if you have like Carrollton or what are these ones called? Right. So like Cumming or all these ones all around. These are like, what are those called? Tell me. I love grocery stores in the country. Things. So anyway, you know what I'm talking about. So like, let's just say like, here's the primary market. And then here is the, like, I call them sub-primary. They're all like right here. So this is Atlanta. And then Atlanta around it has like Cumming and, Carrollton or whatever. No, these like cities that are surrounding the major cities. That's really kind of like your metro Atlanta area, your metro Orlando area, right? And so the truth is that those kind of sub-primary markets are really included into the primary, right? So you can't be like, so for instance, like I live in Peachtree City, Georgia, which is a sub-primary market of Atlanta. And I can't and Atlanta, has like millions of people. And then but Peachtree City only has 30,000. That's it. So Peachtree City, because of the population of 30,000, does not make it a secondary market. It is still part of the primary market. And I call those like little tiny towns that are all around all the metro areas. I call those sub. And those only, you can only, like in Peachtree City, Georgia, and you guys all have these wherever you're living. In Peachtree City, Georgia, we can only fit like 30 to 35,000 in that city. And that's it, because there's all the other cities around it and stuff. So because of that, it's really considered part of the primary market. The pricing of those properties is going to be a lot like the pricing in like primary market, and also the size of the facilities are only going to be almost as big as those larger facilities in the metro areas, right? So, but the purpose of this whole conversation is to tell you that there can only be so much storage in your area, okay? Depending on how many people are living in that area, that is what's going to quantify how much storage can be in that area, okay? And so there's a whole bunch of stuff that kind of goes with that. People are relocating and moving in and out and downsizing, and so the trends kind of change a little bit, and that's why the prices change. But the truth is that Peachtree City could only have so much storage. And if it has too much storage, then you are not going to be able to be full, right? And so, like, it's really true when you think of like a primary market facility, like let's just say there's extra space storage in Atlanta, they are running their numbers completely different. Like 80% full for them is like awesome, right? Or 85% full is good, right? Whereas like once you go kind of out into maybe a secondary or a tertiary market, your vacancy, right, or how full your occupancy, how full you are, is really, higher than in a lot of primary. Okay. So we have facilities all over. We have facilities in Florida, Georgia, Tennessee. And, we have like a couple of facilities in the panhandle of Florida. And they're like smaller cities that will definitely be considered tertiary markets. And they are always like 95% full. If I took that same facility and I put it into like, Augusta, what's it called? Savannah or Tallahassee, which we consider really a secondary market, that capacity probably will always be at 95%. You're happy if you get to 90% or maybe even 85%, depending on how much storage you have as competition and how many people live in that area. Does that make sense? Just let me know if you have questions on that. Okay. All right. And so it's really, really important, I think, right now to understand because you guys are all wanting to get out there and look for storage to buy. And there's a couple of factors that you have to figure out before you actually do this. And one of them, the biggest factor, I talk about this in my course a lot, is where should I be looking? If you cannot afford millions of dollars for a storage facility, then there is no reason for you to be looking in a primary or a sub-primary market. And I see this all the time with new students. They're like, oh, I live in Nashville and there's a storage facility right around the corner from me. And I really think that I could just buy that and, do something with it or whatever. And the truth is like, unless you have like a lot of money to put down, hundreds of thousands of dollars to put down, or you can bring people in or you have raised money, like starting out in those areas is really just kind of a waste of time, so start thinking about how much money you can bring to the table and how many storage facilities there are in your area. Because if there is a lot, then Like, so for instance, like we have a facility in Orlando, and I'm going to tell you, like the Orlando market, which is it's a subprime. It's not in Orlando, but it's a sub-primary market of Orlando. And I'm going to tell you, us buying that facility, first of all, was like several $1,000,000. But second of all, is that it is very, very hard to maintain occupancy in a facility like that. Like you have to be on top of owning this business and managing it. Like, as like a director, CEO, like always looking at your numbers, always think about marketing, always think about what your promos. Whereas like if you buy something in a tertiary market, you still have to do the work, you still have to think about it, but it's like not as encompassing as being a planner. Does that make sense? Okay. So now we're looking at markets. We got primary market, we know, metro areas with the subprimary around it. And those are all going to be kind of encompassed into one market. And you have to make sure that your competition and the way that you look up your competition is you just look up like the location that you're interested in. You just search storage, in that area, like on Google. It's not that big of a deal, right? Now, for the most part, to give you an idea, and there are some secondary ones, right? So we own a facility in like Valdosta. Valdosta, Georgia, has a population of 75,000 people. Okay, so that's a big city, honestly. I mean, a lot of people think like, oh, Valdosta, where the hell's that? But like the truth is like in your state, you always have like big metro cities. Then you have these like little tiny, like kind of like secondary markets that are like bigger cities that are not little tiny like country towns. Okay. So we focus on secondary markets. And kind of that's where we're at is secondary markets. Those facilities are really like $1 million plus. It's very, very difficult to find a cheaper facility in a secondary market. Now, I've been doing this for a long time. I bought my facilities a long time ago, and I got some really good deals. And we're going to be able to sell those and make a lot of money on them. But the truth of the matter is the way the market is right now is that, secondary markets are really kind of more expensive. It's hard to find a facility less than $1 million if you are not in a tertiary. The tertiary market is the country. It's the middle of nowhere. It's the country, right? Population is super important. So let's say a market 200,000 K or more. The secondary market, let's say, is okay. This is like now. Obviously, you can see there's some gray area. Okay, like if I'm saying a secondary market, there's a population of like 50 to 150 people, 150,000 people. And then I say primary market, there's 200,000. Obviously, that 150 to 200 is like a gray area. So for instance, think about like Tallahassee. I live in Tallahassee and there's 250,000 people here on a good day and, 350,000 people on a bad day, right? When like the football people are here, like all the students are back and stuff like this. Okay. So like the fluctuation of the population is moving depending on the time of the year. Right. So they're kind of like a gray area. And then, so like if you think of Tallahassee, I mean, there's a lot of people coming and going at all times in the city. And, so like you're looking at like how many people are actually there and then how many people are coming and going on a regular basis. And so there's like 75,000 students that live in the city and only live here for a couple of days, a couple of months a year. So like there's a lot of fluctuation and stuff. So you're having to really consider these aspects when you're thinking about purchasing storage, where to purchase it, which is one of the most important things that you should be doing. So you're probably listening to me right now and you're like, hey, I live in Mississippi and I live in Jackson, Mississippi. So I'm just going to buy the storage facility there. But the truth of the matter is that first of all, there's only really so many opportunities in that state or even in that area. And so then you say, okay, well, maybe I can buy something outside. And then you're really starting to look at your markets. You're really starting to look at like, where the population is moving to. Where is it growing? Where is it trending to? Is it stable anyway? Depending on your type of preferences and stuff. And so this is kind of what you're looking at. So you're looking at populations. Okay. So, and then On top of that, so now you're like, you kind of sort of have an idea of like what the markets look like. And then you know that there are some primary markets based off of your market here. So you have some primary, I'm sorry, my bad. You have some primary markets for a primary market, and then you have a sub-secondary, right? The sub-secondary market is the little tiny cities around the secondary market, right? And those are really good areas to invest in as well, because you know how the cities kind of grow out. And then, so for instance, like we have a facility in Valdosta, but it's actually in a city, it's like in a little tiny town, kind of right on the outskirts of Valdosta. But Valdosta's grown so big that that town is really now just like a part of Valdosta. Like you just drive in like 2 minutes and you're there, right? And so those areas are very, very good areas to be looking at, because secondary markets are where a lot of people are moving to that really can afford, almost so much, only so much stuff, right? So the sub-secondary market. But those sub-secondary markets, the population of those cities are very, very small. They could be 5,000 people or 10,000 people or 15,000 people, so they're kind of smaller towns growing. So you can't really like totally base everything off of population. You have to really kind of think of in terms of like the entire area, how the whole state works, whatever state you're interested in, this kind. And then you also have what's called sub-tertiary market. So let's say that you only, like I have a student right now that only has $50,000. That's it. Right. And the thing is that you can get into storage with any amount. It doesn't matter if you got 10,000 or you got $2 million. Okay. So don't ever think that you can't do this if you don't have any money, because that is a lie. So we have a student that just did like a case study yesterday in our mastermind. And he bought a facility in like a little tiny town of 846 people. Okay. And it was 50 units. So just think about this, 846 people, and it was 50 units, supposedly full, but not nearly making enough money, like what it should be. The nearest storage facility was like 20 miles. It was the only storage facility in that town. And that owner was always full, but the owner was not charging what it should be. So for instance, like it was charging like $40 for a 10 by 10, and all the other facilities, even 10 or 20 miles away, were at like $150. Could you imagine, like, if you were $40 and everybody within 20 miles was at like 130, 40, 50? And that's a great opportunity to be able to raise rates and see what happens. Now, obviously, in little tiny towns like that, you're like, okay, what can I charge? There's like a balance, right? It's like, how much money can I push it to? What can I do to really raise rents and stuff like that? So that student bought a storage facility in a little tiny town, which I would consider a sub-tertiary market, right? So tertiary market would be probably like, maybe 10,000 people to 25,000 people. And then the sub-tertiary market is really like 10,000 people or less, right? And so he had no money. He had no money to buy anything at all. And so what he did is he talked to the owner, and he picked up the facility for $205,000. That's what the owner sold. So the owner's husband had died, and then she had inherited this property, and she was just like, I'm not into it at all. And so she talked to the owner, and we got it under contract for $205,000. And I was 50 units. It was making maybe like $1,500. It's like really not a lot of money. And so, so what he did is he had no money. So what he did is he talked to a couple of people that he knew, and he asked them if they would be interested in giving like $100,000. And so they did. They gave him $100,000, like even like $110,000 each. So he had like to buy this property for $205,000. He brought two people into the deal, and then he bought the facility together. And then he's just trying to get in. He's trying to get in the store. Just all he's trying to do is just figure this thing out, right? And so he bought a facility. It was in his name, in his company's name, and they were just lenders on the deal. And so they each brought like $110,000. So he had a total of like $220,000, and he purchased it for $205,000. He had $15,000 left over to like clean it up and get everything set up. Remember, he had like no money. So he didn't afford to even get like software or anything. And so he used all that $15,000, like with the sign up and the power wash. And there was like a car wash on the property that was like an old abandoned car wash. And he painted it and cleaned it up. And everyone cleaned the yard up because it was all like really bad and stuff. And then he slowly, this owner like did not like just had like literally gave him a list of the names and their phone numbers. You know, some of them she didn't even have the phone. She had no contracts. You know, and this just last year I just closed on this thing, honestly. So this happens still to this day. This is like typical sub-tertiary or tertiary stuff that kind of goes on with that. But anyways, the point is that he picked up a facility for $200,000. Last August, he closed on it. Over the past year, he cleaned it up and then kind of got it leased up, got everybody at the ESS, and like raised the rents for 10 by 10s from $40 to $110. And any new people and anybody that he could get a hold of, he auctioned them out. And then all the ones he put all for 110. And he leased everybody. So out of 50 units, he now has like, I think 5 units available. You know, there's always some available, right? And he's making like almost $3,000 a month, something like this. And so he decided to list the property. He listed it out last month. He listed it for $390,000. He's just like, I'm going to see if anybody wants to buy this thing. So he listed it for $390,000 and he got an offer for $330,000. So he literally bought the property for $200,000. It took a year to clean the property up, and he's selling it for $330,000. He'll pay his partners off what they owe, and then in the end, he'll make like $100,000. And that's only 1 year, and he only visited the property 4 times in the last year. Okay, so that is a typical story of a sub-tertiary, tertiary market property. And those are out there all the time. So if you're listening to me right now and you're like, I just don't have any money, but I know I want to get into this industry, that is where you're going to be, in that area. And whether or not you pay for it yourself or you get somebody else to give you the money over it, that is the typical story that you're going to see in this market. So you can buy properties for $500,000 or less in these tertiary or sub-tertiary. Now, if the property is producing what it should be, and it's an income-producing property, you may not be able to get it like, you know, this is a severely mismanaged facility, so you may not be able to get it like that cheap. You know what I'm saying? But if it's an income-producing property, maybe a little bit more than $500,000, but you can find really good $1 million or less properties in sub-tertiary or tertiary. Okay, so that's one of the markets, and then the second market is the secondary or the sub-secondary. The sub-secondary markets I told you about, like you have a secondary city, and then you have like little tiny cities around it. Those little tiny cities around the secondary city are very, very good areas to be looking in for facilities. And you can get those typically for $1 million or less. And unless it's like, you know, a really big facility and they're 80% full plus or whatever, you know, but you can find a lot of really good small facilities in these sub-secondary markets. Now, in Valdosta, right, we have competition. We've got CubeSmart. CubeSmart loves to be in secondary. If you look at where CubeSmart is, they are in a lot of secondary markets or even on the outskirts of secondary markets, right? And once you really start looking at facilities and like really kind of getting to know the market and stuff, you really kind of have an idea of like which players are out there and which of these markets. So like in primary market, you have a lot of like public storage and extra space storage and all these like bigger players and stuff. And then like these secondary markets, you'll see Life Storage, Monster Storage, 10 Federal Storage. Those are really secondary market players. And they have a population that they want the town to have. They want to be on the higher end of the secondary market. They want like secondary market all the way almost into a primary market, but not kind of a primary market. So think of terms of like just population growth or stabilization, and really kind of figure out where you're going to be. I started out in like sub-tertiary markets. That's where I started out. My first thing, one of my very first facilities, I bought like 100 grand. Okay, it's a little tiny, 50 units. I got it for 100 grand. We're selling it for 350 grand, now. So like I make a couple $100,000 on it. But so you can just think of in terms of like population, right? Is where you want to be. And you could be in the smaller populations, or you could be in like tertiary, you could be on the higher end of any one of those levels. Okay. Depending on where you can afford to be. And don't waste your time looking in places that you can't afford to be in. That's the key. Now, what are the amounts? Like it's like, okay, yeah, great. Now I know populations. Great. What are the amounts of money? Definitely in primary market, it's going to be like millions of dollars or more. Okay. So like I have a student that just bought a storage facility in Odessa. And Odessa would be considered a secondary market, right? It's got like a couple 100,000 people there. It's an oil town. And he bought that facility. I think it was like maybe 250 doors or something. He bought it for like, almost $3 million. Just think about that. And so in secondary markets where there's a population of a couple 100,000 people and kind of bigger facilities, even if they're older facilities, they are going to be, millions of dollars. That's on the higher end of a secondary market. And you could be on the lower end, like maybe in the sub-secondary market or in a population that's a secondary city that's a population of like 50,000 people or 75, like Valdosta has 75,000 people. And Odessa has like a couple 100,000 people. Those are still considered secondary markets, right? But they're just on the higher end and the lower end. And the lower end Valdosta, like you can buy a property for $1 million to $2 million in that city. All right. So if you can afford a couple $100,000 down to buy a property, then you could be looking in secondary markets. Now, if you can't afford a couple $100,000 down to buy a property, then look in the sub-secondary. Look at the towns around the secondary market. So for instance, like Augusta, is it Augusta, Georgia? Like Augusta, Georgia is considered like one of the best places to move and live in the country. There's a lot of growth going on. There's a lot of growth on the outskirts of those areas. There's a lot of little towns popping up. And so, going and looking in those towns, and then just buying and holding, that's a very good buy and hold for the long term, 5 or 7 years. That'd be a very, very good buy. Okay. So if you can afford, $1 million plus, secondary markets are perfect. Now, there may be some diamonds in the rough, maybe around the secondary markets. And there's probably a lot of newer facilities. You'll see a lot of newer facilities going up in these sub areas because that's where the population is growing to and moving to. And you can build. It's very good to build in a sub secondary area or a sub primary area because that's kind of where the city is growing to. Or look for a city where you have look for cities where there's some clusters. So for instance, we own a facility in Clarksville, Tennessee, and then they have Fort Campbell right there and a whole bunch of other cities right there. And it's kind of this big cluster. So there's a lot of people that kind of live in the area. We happen to be in Clarksville. There is a lot of storage facilities in Clarksville. I'm going to tell you, there's way too many storage facilities in Clarksville. And then also Fort Campbell's got a lot of stuff. But then out of the secondary markets, those towns are growing out, So that'll be a good area to look. So just kind of think about it in terms of market growth and relocating or moving trends. And then what the population is of these areas. And then how much can you afford? How much can you really afford? So let's do primary. So this is kind of how it's looking, right? This is the markets. What's the population on this side? And then we'll do dollar amounts here, okay? So population is maybe, let's see, plus, I already said plus 200, okay? Is that? And then secondary is going to be minus 200. Okay, less than 200K. I don't know how to write less than or greater. And then tertiary is going to be 25K. So now you know that there's a lot of gray area. Okay. These submarkets could have 5,000 people, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50,000 people. Okay. The population of these submarkets matters if it matters in terms of like growth and space. Okay. But at least you kind of have like an idea what the market. So in the primary market, you're going to need like millions of dollars, like plus 2 million or whole. Okay. From the most part, primary markets can be like super expensive. Now, you may find some old guy that's like had like I have bought a lot of totally abandoned storage facilities where they were in like not primary market, but they were secondary markets, and the owners were just like done with them. Just like And I've seen abandoned storage facilities in primary markets, but abandoned storage facility, like we got an abandoned storage facility in Atlanta. And it didn't have any tenants in it for years and years and years. Just like sat there, and the owner, he still wanted like $1 million for that property. You know what I'm saying? Like, abandoned storage facilities are super expensive. So because the land is a lot, is more expensive and stuff like that. So, secondary market. So okay, and then the sub-primary market, you could probably find something. Let's say that if I was living in Atlanta and I wanted to buy something in like Jonesboro, Rivervale, Peachtree City, Fayetteville, it would still be super expensive. Okay. It's going to be very expensive. I have like a 125 unit facility in a sub-primary market of Atlanta, and I'll sell that thing for 1.5 million. So I will say 1.5 to like plus. Okay. And then you're going into secondary markets. The secondary market is going to be a little bit cheaper, obviously, less people and stuff. Now, obviously, let's just say that you find a facility in a sub-primary market and it's got like 1,000 doors. Okay, like obviously it's gonna be like way expensive. I'm just talking about general, so you can kind of have an idea where you should be looking. Okay, but secondary markets, you're gonna be like plus 1 million. Okay, it could be depending on what it is. It's starting at least you have a starting. You see kind of the trend. All right. And then here as well, you're going to be like, plus 1 million. Okay. And then you're going to be here. This is like 500K below. Well, that's not. And then this could be like 5. Now, in terms of like what the price is around, this is just like super typical. Okay. Your down payment. You're going to be about 20 to 30%, depending on who you are and your experience and this kind of stuff. But I'm seeing like 25% down now. So all last year it was 30% down, like for conventional funding. All of a sudden it flipped in the last like month or so, and banks are going to 25% down. So if you can budget 20 to 30% down, that would be ideal. I don't think it's going to get below 20%. All right. And even, SBA is requiring more money, and SBA is very hard right now because the interest rates are so high. So let's just say you're going to get like a conventional loan. You're going to need like 20 to 30% down. Okay. So you're going to need like 300, maybe 400K, right? So you're still going to need, for 500K, you're going to need $150,000 down. I have a student that just bought a facility, lives in Jacksonville, bought a facility in Panama City. It was like perfect location. Like just she drive there a couple hours, she's there. And it was $550,000, and she had to put like almost $200,000 down. I think it was like $175,000 down. Okay. And so you just have to think of it in terms of how much money can you come down to, how much money can you come up with. And if you want to buy a bigger facility, all you have to do is say, how am I going to come up with $400,000? And if you watch me and listen to me, oh, by the way, everything I'm telling you is in my book. All right. So make sure you get my book if you read it. It's available as an ebook right now on Amazon. I haven't figured out how to do piggyback yet. We're working on it. Okay. But like everything that I'm telling you, I'm explaining this inside my book. Okay. This is it. And, depending on how you fund things, you should be working on coming up with money for the down payment and being able to have that available, because that's just, good practice, Now, if you want to buy something for 2 million plus and you're like, okay, I only have $150,000. Happens all the time. I'm going to tell y'all, happens all the time. I have a student, lives in Idaho. just closed on a facility in Texas, and the property was $2.5 million. And he only had $150,000. How do you buy a property for $2.5 million? You only have $50,000. Guess what? It's in my book. How to do that? It's in my book. But what he did is he bought a $2.5 million facility, and he needed $600,000 down, like $500,000 down for the purchase of the property. Another like 100,000, maybe it was 450 down and 150 for like CapEx stuff. Okay, that's just it. So what he did, and I'm telling y'all, there's like a million ways for you to do something. Okay, this is not just one way. This is what I'm going to go over in the boot camp. This is what I teach in like really in depth in the coaching. But so what he did is he started a 506B fund. And then he raised $600,000. And it was his 150, and then it was another 50, and then it was 200,000. So there's a total of like 4 investors. Yeah, there's a total of 4 investors. And this is what they put in. They started a company together, right? These are the GPs. And then SBA funded the deal. The SBA loan. And he had 15% down. And like 7.75% of interest. 20 years. That is what he did. So it's his very first facility that he's ever bought. He had the 150, right? He came up with the 150. He brought 3 other people in. They created this company, made this fund, and then they got the loan from SBA and closed on, I think it was 504. And that's how they closed on it. It's the very first deal. It's an amazing deal. The deal is worth like $5 million. So they'll be able to triple the value. I mean, not triple, sorry, double the value of that property within like 3 to 5 years. And it was already income producing property. It was making like $250,000, So the bank was like, yeah, sure, we'll fund this thing, but you got to come up with $600,000. And so he was like, okay. And so then we sat and like worked together, and my attorney helped him put the fund together. And that is what we did. Is he went out and just asked everybody, and storage nerds, and then also like everybody else he knew. And somehow he came up with the money. All right, he did it. So even if you only have, right, $150,000, whatever amount of money that you can come up with, just as long as you know how to raise capital and you know that there's enough money out there for you to do this because you have an abundance mindset, then you can accomplish anything that you want. Now, if you are other person is like, I only have $50,000 and that's it. Like I can only buy X amount of dollars. Then you know now which markets you should be focused. There's somewhere, if I only have $50,000 and I'm not going to borrow from anybody else, I'm not going to bring a partner in. I hate partners. They suck. I'm only going to do this on my own, which a lot of people are like. Then you just go to tertiary and sub-tertiary markets and find your facility. Remember, I told you about the $200,000 purchase, right? He didn't bring any money to the table. He brought 2 people in at $110,000 each. And then he just managed the thing. And at the end, when he's selling it, he's closing in September, he will just cut them a check and they'll get part of that $130,000 that he's going to make. Okay. So that's how it works. So just depending on, looking for the facility, where you look, and then if you are good at raising money, if you're good at talking to people and getting them to come in and like do your thing, then anything on this sheet is possible. Because I have 16 facilities and I've only ever put to purchase the property, $25,000. That's it, out of 16 facilities, because I do this next is what I do. Okay. So anything is possible. Now, I wanted to just reiterate again that the book is available on Amazon for you to read, to go in depth. And then you probably got an email this morning letting you know that the Storage Nerds coaching program is going to be closing down. Right. So if you are interested in joining the coaching program and having me help you hold your hand through these types of deals and finding deals and stuff, then all you have to do is just apply. to talk to me, right? And to get on my calendar, we can discuss how the coaching program works. It's a good fit for you. So that is available, and I'm closing that down. I'm going to be focusing on other things. I have a couple of new projects I'm working on. I want to be able to focus. And then anybody that gets into the coaching program now, I will help them find a facility. So they'll be in for as long as it takes. I'll be there. But I'm not going to bring any new students in, right? Because I only have so much time, and I need to make sure that they get right. All right. So I appreciate you guys listening to me, and I will see you guys at the next session. Take care.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Storage Nerds. Hope this informative conversation inspired you to go out there and jump into this highly profitable business venture that people rarely talk about. Get more tips on storage space investing at www.stacyrossetti.com. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave a rating. Together, let's build that thriving passive income one storage space at a time. Until next time.